Hey guys, welcome back to Set of Sessions on a Saturday. Women of Amazon, this time in the chair, in the hot seat, in depth with Cara Sayer. How you doing, Cara?
I'm very well, thank you.
Do you want to give everyone a little bit of an update what you've been up to this week before we get into your story? I'm just going to start sharing to some of the groups.
Okay. What have I been up to this week? I've been looking at SEO on my website. The new website's about to launch, so I've been working on that. Had a few legal letters going out for various different legal cases I'm dealing with at the moment. And my daughter's been doing exams, so that's been fun. And just sort of cracking on, really. Updating my A+ content, my images, etc., because I constantly tweak them. Yeah, just sort of day-to-day normal life.
Excellent. Just a few hellos here. So Michelle Venton says, such a great example of how you don't have to be obsessed with keywords, launches and black hat tricks to sell successfully on Amazon. Cara says, Michelle Venton, you're a wonderful example of that. Nothing like respect and encouragement. And there truly is in the space for everyone in the market. And you're always being gracious about it. And also an inspiration. Looking forward to hearing
Michelle
about Cara. What's that?
Michelle is very gracious. That's
she's an absolute superstar.
Lovely.
And she just plays it right down. It's quite funny because she's probably one of the most down to earth people we know, and she's more successful than 95% of the sellers in the space. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just saying for someone who's so respectful, it's nice. It's good. Florin is here. Good morning. Back on board today. Florin, he's over in Australia, so he has to stay up till silly o'clock in the morning, but he had an early night last night after 60 days, so I forgive him for that. Pat Taylor, afternoon, Danny and Cara. Hope you are both well. David's in the feed. Andrew's in the feed. Who else we got here as well? Right. Let's take it back, and I won't say way back because you never speak about ladies' age, but let's take it back to childhood.
To maybe 10 years ago, possibly.
We'll go back 10 years. There we go. Get you on the right foot. Yeah, butter you up first before we get into the tough questions. Right, yeah, so let's go back. So if we take it back to childhood, who was your biggest inspiration back then?
Actually, no, I don't know really. When I was a child, I actually wanted to be a TV presenter, or I wanted to be a lawyer first of all, and then I actually did some work experience at a legal firm and decided that wasn't for me. I just found it too kind of soul sucky, and too money. It was too much about the money and not about helping people, which is what I kind of thought that legal work was about. And then I wanted to be a TV presenter for quite a long time, or work in television production. But no, I don't think I really had an inspiration. I mean, as I got older, funnily enough, my mum was one of my big inspirations, because after my parents split up, she went from nothing, sort of not having worked for years, to sort of, getting a job, having to support me and my brother. And then she got headhunted. Eventually she ran her own business for a while. And then she got headhunted by BT. And by the time she retired, she was sort of head of internal communications for BT, which, going from somebody who doesn't have a degree, and is a very bright woman, totally switched on, but didn't have the confidence probably, and did an amazing job. And actually she's always been my inspiration. And actually when I talk about resilience and keeping going in tough times, I think that comes from the fact that when I was younger, we went through some very tough times. And actually those, and more emotional and financial in some ways. And those times have always given me a very much what's the worst thing that can happen? I'll go and work and stack shelves in Tesco's. That's literally the worst case scenario.
Yeah. So going back then, so really it's in around the time your childhood, you looked to your mum as the most inspirational person in your life. And where did that come from in terms of, did your mum put you on the road to being an entrepreneur, or did you find that in there early?
No, my dad was an entrepreneur. He was a very successful entrepreneur, very, very successful. Basically,
so if you don't mind, what did he do? Is that all right to talk about your dad?
Yeah. So he set up, he was in freight. So he set up, for example, the first overnight deliveries to Northern Ireland, the first overnight deliveries to Jersey, etc. And he got his business bought out a couple of times, and then eventually kind of retired. Then he went back in again, did another business. He's an author. He's done all sorts of things. My father's a very successful person, but actually he's been one of the reasons why I probably so I was brought up in a very well-off background. Multi-million pound background. We had Ferraris and all that sort of stuff. And that's probably one of the reasons why I don't give a shit about stuff like that, because I know it doesn't make you happy. So what makes me happy is, quality time with friends, family. And, I don't need a massive mansion. I don't need fast cars. They're really completely immaterial to me. I need something to get me from A to B. And if I can afford it, I'll get something that's a bit nicer than a knockabout. But I've had knockabout cars, and I've loved them just as much as I've loved a newer car. So things don't mean a lot to me. I think that's the primary thing. It's more about experiences.
Possessions. Yeah, experiences more over possessions and looking good to the next person stuff. Because it's very clear you're not entitled. Like some people, it's one of the worst attributes someone could have is to be entitled. And that's definitely something that you're definitely not. So back then, when you were younger and you said you went through like the tough time and they split up, did you go through them stages of where you had everything to nothing? Because that can be a big shock to the system. Like if you're born with nothing, you don't know any difference.
So we used to shop in Harrods, Marks and Spencers, etc. And then my mum couldn't afford chicken. So, and I lived in a very large mansion in one of the most expensive places in the UK. I think it still is. And then I went to I had cardboard boxes to live out for a while. I mean, it wasn't, don't get me wrong, I wasn't living in poverty by any shape, but there was a big jump in lifestyle,
social standing and everything just switched up.
Social standing, actually, because we still lived in a very nice area. We just didn't have the stuff that was inside the rooms, if you know what I mean. And also the other side of it as well. I mean, it was more about the attitude, which was having to ask for money and having to ask for things. Whereas before, I just got not given things, but, everything just materialized as things generally do when you're a child, like your parents are supposed to provide for you. And then it became more of a case of having to well, can I have this and can I have that? And then being made to feel bad for asking for anything, however basic it might be. And that was quite tough. But, as I said, it's all been a learning experience. And, it taught me to be very grateful for very little, frankly. But also to, I've always been aspirational. It's not like, I've always wanted certain things in terms of, I've always wanted to be able to, I'm more about experiences, as I said. So for me, I love to travel. So, traveling is my big thing. So being able to.
I see your toes everywhere.
I know, a toe shot.
A little champagne glass and a toe shot, isn't it?
Exactly. And I do love traveling, and that's, something I'm very lucky to be able to do through work, and also personally be able to take my daughter on holiday and have nice experiences and memories with her as well.
Yeah. So did you find as well, like, I come from a family where mum split up and stuff like that. And like what you said there's sometimes it's tough, like when you ask for things, there's a strain on the relationship. Did you have a thing where you spent time with your mum, time with your dad? Did you find that kind of tough to deal with at the time?
Yeah, I mean, basically, we lived with my mum, but we had to spend every weekend with my dad. And he was only like a mile up the road. But we didn't get any choice in that. And it was, was quite difficult in some ways in that, it would have been quite nice to have been like given an option. But hey, that's not how it works. So, I mean, we had, it was a very, it was a very unpleasantly, very acrimonious upbringing. And, when I then divorced my now ex-husband, we're still really, really good friends now. And he knew what an impact my childhood had on me and how I was very anti that ever happening to our daughter. And actually, even now we're pretty much best friends, but we're just not suited to be married. And, we get on really, really well, and we pull together, for everything. Everything's about Holly. And, we, every now and then, obviously, I mean, I think yesterday he annoyed me and I was just like, oh my God, I totally know why I divorced you.
But that's the thing is your child's not a pawn. They're not using as leverage. And I think that's really key.
Exactly.
In any given situation. So back to your childhood again, in terms of school, did you enjoy school? You like me, couldn't stand it. And
No, I mean, I was very lucky. I went to private school, one of the top UK girls' schools, and I made some really amazing friends who I'm still in touch with now. But the thing was, if I'm honest, I was very bright, and I was quite lazy.
Yeah.
So, and also, I think the problem was because I was in the school I was in, it was very much about basically what it did. And this is really interesting because there are so many amazing, successful women who have come out of this school, yet they all think they're a failure. And that's because success was never celebrated, because however well you did, well, you could do better than that. And actually, that is something I think, again, you know, has been really important having a daughter, is I've wanted her to go to a school where, you know, she's actually congratulated for what she does and encouraged to do better. But it's not like, oh, well, you've got a B. Well, that's crap. You know, it's like, well,
there's got to be a balance between that and getting a trophy for coming 15th, isn't there?
I mean,
but I know what you mean. It's the form of encouragement. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, so it was a really good school. I had a really bad time in primary school. I was bullied. You know, I was bullied by a few different people. I was bullied emotionally. I was bullied physically. But when I went into secondary school, that's where I found my tribe, who I'm still busy friends with now. Like, God, how many bloody years? 30
Whatever, yeah, we don't have to count them years, but yeah, go on. Yeah,
38 years on.
Yeah.
And you know, and so, and whilst I kind of enjoyed school really, because I didn't really have to, as I said, I think my attitude is I've always been a bit sort of, if you tell me I've got to do something, I won't do it. So if you tell me that I've got to get A's all the time, I won't bother. I'll just do as much work as I have to do to get a B, and I'll be okay about that. And I've always been a tiny bit rebellious as well. So, for example, I wanted to go to university, but I didn't necessarily want to go to Oxford or Cambridge, which is where everyone went from my school. And I went to Bournemouth Poly because the course I wanted to do was only available. It was at St Andrews University, which I didn't want to go to because it was Scotland and it was cold. Leicester, because I just didn't fancy it.
We love our Scottish people. Just by the way, we do love Scotland. Yeah, go on.
No, we love Scottish, but I've got lots of lovely friends in Scotland. I just don't want to live there.
Yeah.
And then Leicester, I just didn't fancy either. And then I went to Bournemouth, and I just fell in love. I love Bournemouth. I mean, it's just beautiful.
Because of the beach side. And
basically.
Like
so it was really interesting. While I was at university, I had a negative correlation with my tan and my results. So basically, the better my tan, the worse my results. So in my final year, I was quite pale, but I did quite well.
Yeah. So what did you study?
I studied communication, which is a bit of a mishmash, and that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to do like English or Latin or arts or something like that. I wanted to do something that I felt was a bit more practical and a bit more down to earth. So I studied communication, which has all sorts of stuff. It had linguistics, it had PR, marketing. It also had, God, I can't remember. There was loads of stuff in the first 2 years, and then you honed down to 3 subjects in the final year. So in the final year, interestingly, I did conflict bargaining and negotiation. And I think a lot of that had to do with my childhood. And actually, I got 99% apparently in the exam. So I obviously have a natural gift for that. And then I did PR was another one. And I can't remember what the other one was. But anyway, I can't remember. Anyway, I did something else as a third part for the final year. And I really enjoyed the variety. I get bored very easily. So I like lots of variety. And that's what that course gave me.
So where did it take you from there? You've got your... was it a degree? Did you have or?
Oh yes, darling. I have a degree. I have a BA on.
All right. So did that go anywhere other than on the mental piece? What happened with that degree? What did that get you into there? What was your first job from there?
Fuck all, really. To be honest, my degree didn't really get me a job. I got me a job. So I've been working since I was 15 because I didn't get pocket money. So I used to go. I worked in. I don't know if you ever remember Cullen's, the delicatessen. Range. I've worked in Next. I've worked in Debenhams. They made the stupid mistake of asking me to work in the shoe department. I hate feet, other people's feet. So that didn't last very long, but I went into clothes instead. So I've worked all over the place. I worked in a random little shop in Windsor, whatever. And I've always worked. I've always been a hard worker, and I've always been a big saver. So, you know, for me, it's always been important to have, because I think I had that financial stability taken away from me, like ripped out from under my feet. I've always been very much into having some kind of stability that I create myself under my feet. So basically I'd always worked. And then when I went to university, I started doing temping in offices because I earned more money doing that. And I used to do reception work and secretarial work, etc., etc. And I got a job in a PR agency for about 3 or 4 months. That was great. And then the next year I got another job in the PR department of a big company where they offered me a graduate they offered me a place on their graduate scheme, which I didn't take up because I had a boyfriend. Stupid me. It would have been in America, in Atlanta. And then, funnily enough, when I left university, I then went, because I'd said about wanting to work in TV production, I got a job because I used to work at Thames TV in my holidays and in all my spare time when I wasn't working. I used to work for free at Thames TV to get the experience. Because I did this thing called Young Enterprise when I was at school, and I just stayed in touch with people and whatever. So I got this job due to the experience I'd got back then. Hated working in TV production, found it really dull.
Why,
and then
why was that? Was it just because it sounds sexy, didn't it? But it was just
it sounded sexy, but it was really boring. And it was really grunt work, and it wasn't really using your brain, and the people, some of the people were total assholes. I mean, my one woman I work for to this day, if I saw her in the street, lying dead lying injured in the street, I would walk past her because she was horrible. She was a massive bully, and she was really arrogant and thought she was all the bee's knees, and she was just really horrible, actually. Anyway, fortunately, I got made redundant from that, and which was amazing. I think I got £200 like tax free because I was made redundant. I was like overjoyed. And then funnily enough, somebody I used to work with at the PR agency way back when I first was in at university, she said, oh, there's this job going at this company in Maidenhead. And I was like, oh, right, okay. Went and applied for it and got the job. And that's what started me off in my proper career in PR, which is where we launched like the National Lottery in the UK. I worked on the Chartered Institute of Marketing. But
let's talk about that time then. So you worked in, obviously communications plays a role. National Lottery is quite big. When was that? Early 90s? That
94. 94. It was October 94 when it launched. Yeah.
So walk me through
that. I am that old.
Walk me through that time.
So I was a young just come out of university, thought I knew it all because obviously you do when you're like 22 or whatever I was, 23. But actually the interesting thing was I actually did know a lot more. At least I didn't know it necessarily, but I had a good gut feel for it. And so what I did do is I learned all the basics and you have to do all the grunt work. And I think that's one of the things I always say with an Amazon business is that, before you outsource something, you've got to actually know how to do it yourself. And that's the same in any business, anywhere, because of the fact that, I know what it's like to photocopy. I mean, obviously we don't do this anymore, but photocopy like 1,000 press releases and then frank them and put them in envelopes and then frank them. I know how much time that takes. And the thing is, you need to understand how long something takes and what skills are involved in order to be able to outsource them. So anyway, I did a lot of stuff, and actually I was there for about 2 years. And although I was actually only an account exec, I actually was doing the work of an account director because I was good at what I did. And so
what did that work involved other than, I know that, doing press releases, because I used to have to stuff vinyl into envelopes back in the day, the same period as you. I was in the music industry that you were doing the National Lottery. So I know that the new school people don't realize photocopying and going to the post office and queuing with big bags of faxing. Remember them? Faxes, mini disc. So what? Yeah.
So I wrote press releases. I also did all the strategy behind various different campaigns. So, for example, Wagon Wheels was sponsoring a football activity that was around the whole of the UK, which was an indoor five-a-side competition for boys and girls aged under, I think it was 11. I got Sky TV, Sky Sports involved with it to sponsor it. I got a football magazine involved to sort of support it as a media partner. And I did all this off my own back because it just seemed like the logical thing to do. And then I also worked with the Professional Football Association as well, because Wagon Wheels was supporting their activity scheme called Football in the Community. So I went around briefing all these all these like footballers who had all been in the industry for years. And I'm telling them what to do because I know what to do on the PR side and how to do this and how to do that. So we did have some quite funny nights. I think we did end up in Stringfellows a few times. And then National Lottery, it was going around meeting winners, people who'd won around London and the South East. We didn't deal with the really big winners, like they were dealt with by Camelot head office, but I dealt with all the people who were kind of a notch down.
One who won a tenner, yeah.
No. So I remember him. He was lovely. He was called Keith, and he was a street cleaner from Kent somewhere. I can't remember where it was now. And he won, like, I think it was about 150,000 or something. He was basically going to buy the council house that he and his mum lived in. He still lived with his mum. And he was just such a poppet. And there was loads of all that going on. I worked on Henley Festival, which is a big arts festival, Chartered Institute of Marketing. They used to do regular reports and things. I used to work with them. And then basically I decided I'd kind of had enough of doing that. And a friend of mine was going traveling to Africa. And I decided I was going to go traveling too. So I basically handed my notice in and then went traveling for 2 years.
So when you've done that, to come back there, we're talking 96, 97, 98 period, right? Yeah,
no. So I left, I started there in 94. I left 96.
Okay. So then traveling for 2 years. So
I went for 2 years. So I got back. I left. I think it was September 90. When did I go? No, January 97. I came back January 99.
Yeah. Where did you go from there? Once you'd landed back here, you'd done the 2 years, got that out of your system. Were you unemployable? Did you start a business?
I went straight in and got a job, as you do. I mean, for me, like 2 years of traveling is merely adding a whole load of expertise and experience in managing all sorts of things. And, you know, I still had all the previous skills I had before. So I think I got back in January, like mid-January. And I had a few, like maybe a month and a half or 2 months off. And I think I started my first job at a much higher pay. I've doubled my salary from when I'd left in 96. And I went up in level as well in terms of I went up to an account manager and I did that. So I think I started in May 99. And then that was the company that launched Amazon in the UK, eBay in the UK.
Hold that thought. We're going to get to there. Just want to say some hellos in the feed here. Hi, Danny and Cara. Thanks for your precious time. That comes from Alan. Hasing says hello all. Selva says hello from Singapore. Juan says, hello, Danny McMillan. Thanks again for another episode. Tiffany says, a good morning. Jen says, you crack me up all the time, Cara. Quasim says, hello. Florence says, love my mini disc player. Still own some music that I only have mini disc and nowhere else. It just goes together.
So memories.
So now we get into the stage of, I like to get into the story and develop it. So Amazon, you started early with Amazon. So is this like a fleeting fling with Amazon before returning back as an inventor, or is this the start?
No, I see. Yeah. No, so I just worked with the company that I worked for launched Amazon when they were a book warehouse. And I didn't work heavily on that team, but I did work on the team that launched Tesco online grocery shopping. So, for example, this is back in 99, ringing around magazines. And funnily enough, I actually went to work later for Good Housekeeping magazine. But at the time I was a PR and I was ringing them up and I'm like, we've got this amazing new, online grocery shopping, which means that people don't have to go to the supermarket. It's incredible. And Good Housekeeping turned around to me and they went, we don't think that our readers will be interested in somebody else feeling our avocados. I don't think our readers will be doing online shopping. And I remember thinking, of course you're going to be doing online shopping. But anyway, so I did that. So basically I went around. In fact, actually, it was quite funny. One time I actually was the face of Tesco online shopping because we went to do a photo shoot at a Tesco with my client.
We've got any pictures? Got any pictures we can share in the
one somewhere? I can share it afterwards. I can probably find one.
Dig it out and we'll put it in the show notes. Yeah,
I will. And it's me scanning a pineapple because none of the staff wanted to actually have their photos taken. So I ended up getting into a Tesco uniform and then having photos taken. So for about 2 or 3 years after I even left that job, every time the PA, the Press Association, used a picture of online shopping, they used me scanning a pineapple as a generic shot. Because, and I was just like, oh, great. And one of my ex-boyfriends, funnily enough, rang up an old friend of mine, was like, so is Cara working in Tesco now?
So where do we go from here? So that's a brief moment with Amazon. Where did we go in terms of where did your career develop from the early 2000s?
Yeah, so then when I left that company, because I frankly got a bit bored of doing there wasn't really much room to do much more. And I decided to go freelance. So I went freelance for a while. And then while I was freelance, I got a job at the National Magazine Company, which is part of Hearst. And that was as a maternity cover PR manager, which I did for, I think, about 6 months. And then I met the publisher of one of the women's lifestyle group, and we got on really well. And she had a new role, which was events and sponsorship manager, which is looking after big events and doing sponsorship within the magazines and working with external companies. So I took that job on. It didn't actually have a job spec really because it didn't exist. And I did that. I think I was there for nearly 5 years in the end. That was the longest job I've had since, other than Snooshade, actually. And I did love it. It was really good fun. And I loved the people I was working with and all the experiences and everything. But in the end, I actually got headhunted by a B2B company. And I just decided it was time for a bit of change of focus.
Yeah, that makes sense. So this is mid 2000s, yeah?
So this is around 2005, 2006, I think. About 2005.
Cool.
No, 2004. Sorry, yeah.
So where was you off to next from there?
So I moved to the B2B event. It was a publishing house, and I was looking after, I think it was about 20 different big events. So I was the Grosvenor House's second largest client. And I did events all the time, like the Hilton, Park Lane, etc., doing these massive, like 2,000 people events, and also a whole load of conferences. But I only was there. Hold on, I'm trying to think. Was it 6 months? I think I was only there 6 months because I got to my. That's right, because when they were very. Oh God!
Here we go.
Someone found the pineapple shot.
Yeah, I think so.
No.
Matt Phipps has found the pineapple shot.
Anyway, so basically what happened was, unfortunately, the company was pretty much run, or the team that I was working for was run by a bit of an old boys club. They didn't like me. I found out quite a few things that they shouldn't have really done, and they didn't like that. And so actually what I did in the end is I actually handed my notice in and I left because they were going to extend my probation based on grounds that I would never have been able to extend one of my teams. And I had a team of about 14 people at that time.
So basically, you was ushered out the door. They put stuff in place to make it difficult for you, was it?
Yeah. Well, no, actually, what happened? Well, they were just assholes, frankly. And so I actually left. What was quite good is I left them, and I left them in the shitter in terms of, they weren't expecting somebody to give up a job because it was a high-paying job. They weren't expecting someone to give up like that. And I was like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not having you treat me like that. In fact, my ex-husband, he actually said to me, I'm not having somebody treat you like that. And actually you can leave. And I was like, as in, don't worry about it. So I was like, okay, do you know what? And I think they were quite surprised. And then they were all like, oh, we want you back. We want you back. I was like, no, sorry, really not interested. And actually that was around the time when, because I've been married to my husband for a couple of years and we've been trying for a baby. So then we started investigating IVF, etc., which is what we ended up doing in order to get Holly in the end.
And so obviously with Holly's come along, we're starting to get near the birth also of Snooshade, right?
Indeed, and it is very much a birth. It is my other baby.
Okay, so let's start getting into the main part of the story here. So Holly's born. Where did the concept come from? What did you fall upon the idea? Was a problem that you wanted to solve, or?
Yeah, so basically I had Holly in October 2007. And I had a most horrendous pregnancy, of course. So I had this horrible hip condition, pelvic condition, which meant that I couldn't walk and I was in a wheelchair for about 9 months. So after I had Holly, I had to learn how to walk again because unfortunately the way I was walking, when I did walk, was actually a bit like a crab. So I had to sort of be taught how to walk properly again. So once I did that, I was sort of up and around and, and I loved walking. And it's really weird, unless you've actually been in a wheelchair, and then you've like dealt with the attitude. So like my mum used to push me in the wheelchair. She's like this tall and this big. And then people would just talk to her over my head as if I was a moron because I was in a wheelchair. I mean, it is a fascinating life experience. Anyway, I got out of the wheelchair eventually. I didn't have to change a nappy for the first 3 months, which was fantastic. And then I started walking everywhere. So I used to take the pram and I'd walk to Sainsbury's, pick up the stuff for lunch, walk to Sainsbury's, pick up the stuff for dinner, and I'd be out walking and then it came to spring and then I'd be out walk. And what I found was that as Holly got older, it was quite easy in the early days to sort of plop a blanket or something over the top. And when it was cold, I'd put my coat over the top, but then I'd hit a curb and then, the coat would fall off and then I'd have like pram marks going over the coat, etc. And I just thought, and I was sitting there one day and I can remember it now. I was with a group of friends of mine in Café Rouge in Weybridge. And we were sitting there and we had about 5 prams all full with babies who were about 6 months plus. We'd fed them all. And then everyone started putting like a blanket or a coat or a cardigan or a whatever over the top of the pram to help the baby go to sleep. And I just thought, God, there must be a product out there which must help babies sleep when they're out and about. And that was literally what I thought. And that was it really. I just sort of decided, and I still don't know to this day. I don't really remember I can't really remember the moment that I actually kind of had that moment of like deciding to actually do something with it. But I obviously did, because I've then grown it into a business.
So how did the first design stuff come about? Were you like, because obviously this is something in terms of commerce, although you've done communications and stuff like that.
I've never done retail manufacturing.
So that's the first thing you've invented, that because there wasn't anything else on the market at the time, was there?
No.
So where did you start? Like, where did you first look? Because now there's information online, right?
There was nothing back then.
Yeah. So how did you get the ball rolling?
Right. So, I mean, first of all, I went to a local fabric shop and bought completely the wrong fabric, and made a sort of hand designed prototype, which again would have been completely rubbish. Yeah. And then I actually, funnily enough, I actually fell back on my magazine roots, because I used to work for a baby magazine, and so often with the magazines, we always used to joke there are these things called cover mounts. So when you get like free makeup bag or free lipstick or free whatever it is sarong on the front of a magazine, those are called cover mounts. Now, with the baby magazine industry, it got to a point at one time where we thought they were going to actually cover mount a real life baby on the front, because they had so many products.
So much stuff there, bottles and boilers and
So they were giving away all sorts of stuff, but I did know that they had to be safe, because of the fact that I knew, because I'd had to source some of the cover mounts, and I knew they had to go through strict safety testing in order to, because you couldn't have like a plastic spoon to feed baby break off in baby's mouth, if it's, because the, potential for legal action could be massive. So I just rang a friend of mine and said, who's doing the cover mounts for Prima Baby at the moment? And she said, oh, Helen, here's her details. So I got in touch, and actually it turns out, and she's still my manufacturer now. She manufactures all these, at the time it was these promotional items that were on the front of magazines. She does various other things now. And she's a mum of 4. She totally got the concept of the product, thought it was brilliant. And then I started working on a sort of proper prototype. I started buying other products and seeing, I already had a few other products myself that I'd used and not liked, and then sort of created a sort of mishmash of all the different things, and then started working on like proper prototypes.
And where did that lead you? Did you do the prototypes here in the UK and then outsource to China, or?
No. So Helen manufactures in China. She's got a Chinese her business has got a Chinese base. It's so she utilizes a number of factories that work primarily or mainly for her. So we got prototypes made up in China and then got them sent over. We tried all different colors. We tried different styles, this, that, and the other. And in the end, I got to one where I was sort of semi-happy with it.
Okay. And then what, if you remember around the time, what kind of investment did you have at the time? Is it just endless spending until you got to where you want to go? Or was it relatively cheap for that period?
I didn't do it. I didn't spend any money actually, because Helen never charged me. So,
it was way dandy in business. If it's
I know.
Yeah.
So she didn't charge me anything for all the prototyping, etc. But then when I did put my order down, I invested my life savings, which were £30,000. So, which was a huge spend at the time. So obviously, whilst I didn't, that she will obviously, I hope, and I know she will have done, factored in all those costs in anyway, as part of it. So I never paid for anything in terms of prototyping, whereas nowadays I think it's more normal to do something where you would be
you have a kick-off fee and stuff, unless you have a long-term relationship and history. Yeah. And so what year was this? 2007 now? 2009?
No, this was 2008, 2009.
Okay. All right. So we're still going, like we're talking 12, 13 years ago. So where did you start to sell the product? Like, what was your route to market? You knew what you wanted to solve a problem. How did you go about solving the problem? You created the product, you got it in development. Helen done you a touch, not charging you anything up front. You spent 30K. Where did you go?
But I didn't, you see. So what happened was I did the prototype, and then I decided I should test the concept of the product. Now, I had 2 options open to me. One was to go on the equivalent of Shark Tank in the US or Dragon's Den in the UK. And the other was to go to a trade show, which was called the Baby Products Association trade show. And they had an area which was designed for newer businesses called the Innovation Zone, where it was slightly cheaper. And you could go in and effectively, get some feedback on the product. So I decided, rather than being laughed off national television, I thought actually it might make more sense to go kind of to the coal mine face and speak to retailers who potentially could tell me whether or not they thought it would be something their customers might buy, which is what I did in the end.
Yeah. So how did that fare? Obviously you asked them, but how did that go for you?
Well, so what's really hysterical is that me and my mum, both of us she was also a professional event organizer. So we turned up at this show, and whereas everyone else had all these like glossy like banners and all the rest of it, I literally had the shonkiest stand ever. It's hysterical. So we literally just like printed off a couple of A3 pictures of friends of mine pushing a pram with Snoo Shade on it. And I'd had somebody print up some cards saying mums love Snoo Shade or something. And the prototype that I had still, I'd been testing it on a almost daily basis, I think, really, in terms of I used to go into Mothercare, my local Mothercare, and I'd be like testing it on all the different prams to make sure it fitted. I was known as the Mad Shade Lady. And so I decided, though, that at this point, the night before we went to the show, I was sewing on middle straps because I decided it needed 2 extra straps in the middle. Now, unfortunately, my sewing skills, I have to say, I don't think I did very well in home ec, and I don't think I did anything higher than, I don't think I ever did even a GCSE in it. So I was sort of standing there at the show going, yes, no, high quality product, blah, 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 blah. And then they'd like, except for the fact the strap's just fallen off, you know. I was like, no, don't worry, that's just because I've sewn it on. It'll be fine. But anyway, I actually met a really lovely lady who I'm still really good friends with, who's the distributor for Sophie La Giraffe in the UK. And she had the head buyer from Jojo Maman Bebe come by her stand. She pointed her over and said, oh, you must go and have a look at Snoo Shade. Oh, by the way, I should also point out, I actually had a copycat before I even launched, because before I went to the show, there was a company that obviously found my product and decided that they were going to copy it before I'd even started.
We'll get into that one because there's another story I want to cover there. Exactly. Let's keep this story going and let's let it unfold. So back to the show.
Yeah. So anyway, she placed an order for 120 units on the spot. Now, you know, at the time I was like, oh my God, you know, it hadn't gone into production. This is in October, and she wanted delivery for like February, March, I think it was. So anyway, I decided, right, that's it. And as I said, I had got no experience in retail, manufacturing, etc. I had it on at a stupidly low price because there was another product that had just come on the market, which wasn't the same, but was a similar concept. And I mean, even before the show, I was like, oh my God, what's the point turning up? Because, you know, there's a product now. I don't need to bother. But actually, my product is still very different from their product. And their product's still around and is usually number 2 or number 3 to my product. And it's good for customers to have a choice of products as well. But I priced it at $14.99, and then everyone was saying, no, yours is really good quality. Should be more than that. So I put it up to $17.99 as my proposed RRP. And then by the time I actually got to like launch phase, I'd had a phone call from somebody else who was in a similar product, but it was for blinds for windows. And he suggested I should change it to $19.99. So I did. So, and that's the price I still have that original product at now. So I decided to put the price to $19.99. Thank God I did, because obviously, you know, otherwise I probably wouldn't have a business. I don't think I could have run it on $14.99 product. And I basically said to Helen, right, that's it. Off we go. Went into full scale production over Christmas. I was just like, oh my God, you know, this is mental, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Then when I was launching, we had I was getting product, I had to fly it over in order to get it in time. And we had the volcanic explosion, you know, in Iceland.
Yeah, the ash. That was 2011, wasn't it?
That was 2010. So basically I was having to fly stuff over, and the freight was like 3, 4, 5 times what it would normally be. But I decided it was better to sell something than sell nothing, and sell something, make a little bit, and then sell nothing and make nothing. And then basically I got in touch after the show. I got in touch with John Lewis with Mothercare, got them on board. I'd also met a distributor at the show who then took me on, and I'm still with them now. And just basically, kept at it and started building the business.
So you went into retail first. Were you selling online on your own store or anything?
Yeah,
or you just didn't?
So I had my own website. My brother's a website designer, so he just built me a really basic website, and then my ex-husband actually built another version for me. And I had about 100 people who'd actually put pre-orders in, because I had pre-orders up right from the word go. I'm a big believer that if you've got a good product, and you've got a new one, people will wait for it if they want it. And I mean, I remember I launched like September, October 2009, and it didn't arrive until March 2010. And I think I had about a 65% conversion rate, which is not bad considering, it's a product no one had ever seen or knew or anything, but they liked the idea behind it. So I sold online myself, and then mainly I just let it, I didn't know anything really about e-commerce as such, other than, you should have your own website. So my distributor sold, I'd actually had two distributors. So I had one distributor who looked after the big boys. So all the Boots, the Tesco's and all that. And then I had another one who looked after all the independent retailers, and they sold to wholesalers. And that's when the product started selling on Amazon and became a bestseller kind of pretty much from the word go.
So what year did Amazon enter the... Oh, so you sold on Amazon from 2010, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So that was back in the day where everything just would fly to the top and your grandfather didn't, effectively.
Well, so it was interesting, actually. I've forgotten this actually, but no. So we sold to Vendor Central first of all. So my distributor, my main distributor, sold to Vendor Central, and so it went to the top of the charts, etc. And then I went to this trade show in September, and this potential distributor, came up and sort of said, "Oh, I've seen your product, blah blah blah." And I was like, "Oh yes, £19.99. Oh well, it's £12." I was like, "What?" He went, "It's £12." Well, what do you mean it's £12? It's £19.99. He went, "On Amazon, it's £12." I went, "Right, that's it. Take it off them." So that's what I did. So my distributor was like, "Oh, no one does that." I said, "Nope, I'm not having them. If they're going to diss my brand, then I'm not having them." So I took it off Vendor Central, and then instead, then I remember this now. So then the other distributor started selling to resellers, and the resellers started selling on Amazon. So by the time I actually took the business back over again, I had 37 resellers on the best-selling listing.
And so how did you deal with that? How did you get rid of them over time?
Well, so what happened was that was much further down the line. So this is early days. So 2010 was when September 2010 is when I took it off Vendor Central, and then it started selling to resellers. And I did have one reseller I used to sell to. And actually, he brought out a copy product of my product as well, which was nice of him. And then I was getting divorced basically in 2014, and I looked at the business and I had to look at the numbers. And this is another big thing that I'm very passionate about.
So everything's like you got the world at your feet. I was waiting for this to come. So you got divorced 2014.
Well, I started the divorce process, yeah.
And you looked under the hood on the numbers, and what did you see?
Yeah, so basically what I saw was that although, I was turning over about 400,000 at that point, and it sounded good, but actually the profit margin was piffle. And I wasn't really making very much money, because when you sell to a distributor, you have to take such a big cut in order for them to be able to then sell to a retailer, for the retailer to be able to make their 42-50% margin. So I thought, well, I've got to do something. So either I've got to get a job, or I've got to do something with the existing business. And I love Snooshade. It is my other baby. And I was like, well, it's a great product. By this point, I'd brought on board about another 12 products. So I had 13 products in the range.
What were they? Were they just very similar to what you had? They like variations or individual?
There were variations. There are also developments and tweaks and so there's about there's about 4 versions which are for 0 to 6 months for strollers. There's 2 versions for 6 months plus for strollers. There's one twin version for 0 to 6 months, and I'm developing one for 6 months plus. I haven't done that yet because it got hit by COVID.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah. I got a couple of them, one for travel cots, one for cots, and then I've got a few versions for infant car seats. So they're each of them has different features, different benefits, different elements, which make them because what it also does, it gives the customer a choice, because customers actually do like a choice of products. They don't just want to be given one option and then, that's it, that's all you can have. They like to feel like they've made an informed decision. So actually having, in my case, what I have is I have a classic, which is the cheaper version with slightly less benefits, features. And then I have the deluxe range, which is slightly more expensive. I've developed it from there.
So you looked under the hood, the numbers are down, you're in the middle, unfortunately, which is people do go for 50% of marriages now, isn't it? Roughly, people go through divorces.
A lot.
And so it's tough, mentally straining, everything else. You've got Holly. What was going on around that period where you're looking at the numbers, about to become single parent effectively? What was going through your mind?
Yeah, well, basically, I'm not one to panic. So I didn't panic. I just thought, right, I've got to either get a job or do something with the business. And then I was looking at all the various other ways I could grow the business. And actually, one of the primary things I saw was on Facebook, all these ads for these Amazon courses, which could teach you how to sell on Amazon.
And sit on the beach.
And you could sit on the beach and you could drink a margarita. And all you'd have to do was listen to the sound of money pinging into your account as Amazon did all the work. And I thought, blimey, this sounds good. I'm up for a bit of this. And of course I thought, God, that's most likely a load of bollocks. But I also thought that if people can actually make like shed loads of millions of pounds selling things like kitchen spatulas and, you know, very sort of what I'd call mundane products, then actually for a brand that I knew had great products, I knew that customers love it, I had brand awareness and all the rest of it. You know, I've got celebrities using my products, royalty have even used my products.
Can we drop any names here?
I can't drop the name of the royalty, unfortunately.
Okay.
I can drop like Amanda Seyfried from Mamma Mia, Kate Winslet.
I'm just going to pick him up off the floor. Go on. Is it Kate Winslet? Who's the other one?
I've got loads, darling, loads.
Go on. Give them to me.
Millions of them. Seriously, I've got shed loads. And the one I was most excited about, well, actually, it was Amelia Fox from Silent Witness, who I'd never watched Silent Witness, but since lockdown, I've made it my mission. I've actually been watching Silent Witness. Like I started on season 6. I think I'm on season 16, and there are 23 seasons. So that was very exciting. She wrote me a lovely letter. Tori Spelling, April from Grey's Anatomy, had quite a few Americans, you know, and English, etc. And people often get papped. Oh, Vogue Williams, she got recently done. Izzy Judd, Harry Judd's wife. So, you know, so I mean, I get quite a lot of celebs using it, which is good. And I've lost track of what I was talking about now.
Okay, so we're talking in and around. We're looking under the hood. There's not much money to go around. You decided to get. So what was the changes? What was the fundamental changes you had to make?
So I went on a course. Actually, I bought it. It wasn't very much, I don't think. It was like a 2-day event in Heathrow. I think it was 2015. And I went and I met all these people who were all wanting. It was a white label product concept where you'd, you know, find a source of product and then sell it. But I actually started picking up a lot more kind of like, well, what you actually do with Amazon and how you can make it work for you and how you can make it like work hard, etc. And I thought, oh, blimey, you know, I'm sure I must be able to. I mean, I was always a bestseller in the UK. I was pretty much always #1 in my category. But I still thought there was an opportunity. You know, I wasn't making so much money, obviously, that, you know, I could go and farm my nails permanently on a beach. So I thought there must be room to grow. And so I started taking a lot of the tips, working on my listings, etc. And actually then what I did is in 2015, Amazon had been stalking me for years to go back to them on Vendor Central. So what I did is I actually agreed to go back on Vendor Central on the condition that they sorted out all my listings, because at this point I had, as I said, 37 resellers on one product. Most of my products had multiple listings, multiple sellers, sorry. And I had things like random pictures, the copy was crap, you know, etc. Multiple ASINs, because people thought that, obviously people who didn't know what they were doing on Amazon thought that they were going to get the sales if they created another ASIN that they weren't going to get otherwise. So anyway, I got all that pulled together and then basically started, what I had to do actually was I had to stop selling for 6 months. So that was really tough. And I had to let everybody who had stock sell out. So I didn't sell to Vendor Central in that time, because obviously if you do that, it's only a race to the bottom. I had to wait until all the resellers had gone, which I did. It took me 6 months. And then once they were gone, then I got Vendor Central stock, and then we started selling again and started doing quite well. But I then realized that actually alongside what that course had taught me was that there was more I could do if I actually did it myself. And so I think I did another course of some sort. I did another meetup, and I was like, wow, this is really how this is. By this point, I think the industry was getting more like there was more of an industry,
more development, more of a community. Yeah.
And people knew more what they were talking about. And so that's when I went into it all guns blazing. So I think at the end of 2016, I think I turned over about 600,000. And then what I also did is I expanded. April 2016 is when I took over FBA myself. So I went into the UK, US and Canada at the same time, and started selling on all 3 channels. Yeah,
that makes sense. So I want to introduce the situation where you've gone after the big guns. They've come. You mentioned a copycat earlier on. We won't name them for legal reasons, but you done a David and Goliath in female form and went after the big retailers who ripped off your product. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so that was last year. Was it last year? Yeah, it was last year. So last April, I was sitting in bed. It was actually, I think, Easter weekend, and I was sitting there on my phone, and I suddenly got this message from one of my followers on Instagram saying, have you seen this? And I was like, no, what? And they sent me this picture of a catalogue of a product that was in a major retailer's catalogue that looked amazingly similar to mine, down to like every detail. So I frankly shat my pants as soon as I saw it and just thought, oh my God, what do I do? And then what happened was I think that was on maybe the Saturday. And then I think on the Monday, they were going to preview it online. And then when they previewed it online, they actually showed what the packaging was going to look like. And I realized that they'd literally taken word for word all my what they'd done is they bought my product. They'd obviously said, what's the best seller in sunshades? And then they'd sent it to China and then they'd copied it. And that's literally all they'd done. And they took all my wording that me and my mum had written all those years ago when I first started. And, you know, they took my iconography, copied the way I did my pictures, everything. I mean, it was unbelievable. So what happened was, I think it was on the Monday, I was on Facebook, on my private Facebook, which is a private account. So you can't find me on search engines, etc. And it's only to my friends. And I was just like,
oh, cheers.
Huh?
I'm not in that one, am I?
You
I've
are.
only got you. Am I in you? Oh, okay. Cool.
Of course you are, you Nana.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Go on. Sorry, you was mid-flow there. Look. Yeah.
Anyway, so I Holly's just walked in, by the way. You can see her in the mirror.
It's reflecting in the background. Don't worry.
Yeah, exactly.
Hello, Holly.
Yeah. He wants to say hello. Hold on.
Hello, Holly. How you doing? We're live on Facebook.
We're
no
live
stress.
on Facebook, but it's fine. Don't worry. That's my lovely 12-year-old. And anyway, so hold on. I've now got distracted. Oh yes. So basically, what happened was I posted all this stuff on my personal Facebook group, what I did was I posted up, like I literally took my packaging and their packaging and posted it on my Facebook page. And then what happened was one of my friends, not realizing that I wasn't sharing this worldwide, took a screen grab of that and then put it on Twitter. Now I think about how do I deal with this? Do I do it discreetly, etc., etc.? And then I just thought, you know what? Sod this for a game of soldiers. Somebody else has opened the door, right? I didn't post it first on Twitter, but now I can. So anyway, Twitter is one of the best places if you want to get hold of journalists. And I just literally went banana. I went on Instagram, I went on Facebook, I went on Twitter, but Twitter particularly. And I basically put up, I did a spot the difference image where I found literally a picture that I'd taken of my product that matched exactly the way that they'd taken their picture. And I put on theirs, you know, cheap $9.99 copy, mine 1999 world first, invented by mum, you know, multi-award winning, etc. Anyway, I managed to pick up, there was a journalist that I'd met years ago who'd done an article on me for some local Surrey. I think he was on BBC Radio Surrey. He was actually Nick. He's lovely. Anyway, he still was in touch with me via Twitter. And he messaged me and said, oh, if you need a hand, let me know. And I went, he said, let me know, or let me know when you need a hand. I said, I need a hand now. So anyway, funnily enough, I'd also been on the BBC like a couple of weeks before because I'd been interviewed in an entrepreneurial slot. So I got in touch with a journalist that had done that and said, is there anyone on the BBC, blah, blah, blah. But then Nick got me in touch with, he works for Channel 5 and he also works on The One Show. So he did an interview with me one day on the Channel 5. And then because he couldn't do both interviews because BBC One, The One Show wouldn't have him do both. But I then got, basically I had to fly home early from a work trip in order to go to Manchester to film a slot with The One Show where the whole story was told, etc. Yeah, and I took them on legally, and I can say that we settled, and you know, and I'm very happy about that. So you know,
so although you settled, and I don't know from our conversation in private, I don't remember whether it's a large, small sum, or whatever, but it's really about stopping them from doing it. So
it wasn't anything that was going to change my life. I'm not the equivalent of a lottery winner, sadly.
Yeah. So basically, has that put a block on them and a lot of attributes of other companies trying to follow suit if they chose to?
Well, it has for the short term, yes, and then you know we'll see what happens in the long term. But you know, the thing is, the main thing about this was it was principle, and actually, I was only really fought back because I had an amazing lawyer who you know was fantastic and very cost effective and was very experienced in dealing with them. And so therefore I was able to do it. I mean, basically all my legal fees have gone, or the win has gone on legal fees, but that's fine. I don't care. I didn't do it for the money.
Well, this is the thing with large companies like that, they can spend years burning you in due process, paperwork and everything else. So it becomes unaffordable. It's like a little pat on the head. You know,
well, what they've actually done is I've actually got 2 other legal cases going. This is really funny. In 10 years of business, I've never done any legal activity at all. And then last year, I actually did 3 legal cases. So I did the big one. And then I also had an incident with a bookkeeper who I'm suing for negligence because she was incredibly negligent. I ended up in hospital. They thought I was having a heart attack. Thank God it was a panic attack. So I'm suing her because she's insured. And then I also sued, I'm also have set, well, it should settle anyway anytime soon, somebody else who copied my product as well.
Yeah. Okay. So not to fuck with Cara really is the thing. Yeah. You don't like bullies. I can see why you do it. It's just, it's the principle.
I don't like bullies.
It's never been about money. Let's talk about some of the awards that you've won.
Well, I've won about 70 in the last 10 years.
Have you? 70? That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, but you see, remember, my background is in awards and that sort of thing. And so I'm very comfortable in that sort of environment. But also, the other thing is there are loads of them that are free for people to enter.
Yeah.
In fact, I can post, I'll put a post up if afterwards on the notes. I'll give you a link to an email that I get every week, which tells you lots of different awards that are available for you to enter. And some of them you have to pay for and some of them you don't. So I have a strategy. So in the early days of the event, I mean, I entered all the startup awards. I won the startup awards. I think it was 2011, I think, for product of the year. I've been in the gift of the year awards. I've been in mother and baby. I won a gold for innovation. I won practical parenting magazine gold awards. And I went, and I have a strategy every year. I enter maybe 3-4 awards. I enter some in the US, some in the UK, just to keep them fresh, but yeah, over the years I've won over 70 awards, I think.
That's incredible.
So some of them, I mean, one of them was amazing. One of them was a free to enter for female entrepreneurs, and it's open every year, and any female entrepreneur worldwide can enter it. It's called the Cartier Women's Initiative Awards, and I entered it in 2011. And there was something like 1,600 entrants from all over the world, and I was one of 3 that got through as a finalist in Europe. So there were two Brits and 1 Israeli in the European group, and I nearly won. The judges actually told me I nearly won, but they chose the person that they did because it was more of a fashion at the time. It was more of a fashion thing, which I totally get. But that was an amazing experience. I mean, that was totally free, and I got flown over to France and went to this amazing women's business conference, and then we had like mentoring and all sorts. And I wrote a business plan then, and I'd never written a business plan in my life, but you had to write a business plan as part of your entry. So that was a brilliant experience.
Yeah. What's been your darkest hour just before dawn? The toughest one?
I mean, my darkest hour was when I had my full nervous breakdown. So I had a breakdown in June 2010, the first year of trading. It wasn't just due to the business, but it was partially, I think, due to the amount of stress I was under because I was full-time mum to Holly, who's 2 and a bit. I was also, a startup entrepreneur in a very unknown world. And I had various other things. I was going through IVF again, which I'm sure hormonally must have messed me up all over the place. And I just basically fell apart, and I was literally a vegetable, and they were going to take me away. But fortunately, my mum moved in. She looked after Holly and made sure I ate. Because, I mean, I lost so much weight. I was literally a skeleton. So anyway, but then it was really fun. I do laugh because I was ill in June, and then by September I was at that trade show that I told you about, which was the one where I found out about Amazon's pricing in September in Germany. Because what else do you do after you've had a full nervous breakdown?
Yeah. How did you bounce back though? Because that's quite heavy. Like you play it off. Oh yeah, 2010 had a nervous breakdown. You've glossed over it, but
yeah, I mean
it's a serious thing to come back from.
Oh, absolutely. And, it was hell. I mean, that really has been my darkest moment in my life, really. When people talk about depression, unless you've actually really suffered from it, you don't know what you're talking about. And, there's nothing like it in the world. And it is not just I'm feeling a bit sad today. Literally, if I didn't want to die, but I just wanted to wake up one day and not feel like how I felt, which is a different dynamic. Unfortunately, we've had suicide in my family, and I would never ever impose that on my family. But, you know, I had that not been the case, you know, maybe I would have chosen a different path, but I doubt it because I'm too much of a, you know, I wanted to get better. And also for Holly, you know, I wanted to get better for Holly. And so what I did is, I mean, I had a couple of wobbles for a few years afterwards. Because I mean, I was also not only doing all this retail stuff, I also had like 22 distributors as well from 2010 onwards. So I was dealing a lot with all of that as well, which is quite a big learning curve. But basically I take the pills. So I still take some antidepressants now because I know that possibly one of my doctors thinks that because of some of the stress I had in my childhood, that I probably don't produce enough sertraline in my system to keep me kind of completely level, levelish. No one's ever really level. You shouldn't be really totally flat. But I mean, I learned to rest more. And actually that's one of the things I am quite good at now, which is, you know,
traveling. You go away and you get a bit of sunshine, a bit of vitamin D.
That's why I do like my weeks away, because I do like to actually just sit and read books and do nothing but switch off and just read crappy books on my Kindle and just have a laugh, and that's it. But also, even sometimes it'll be like, you know, if I'm a really hard worker and I will work all the time, probably. I think I probably get that trait from my dad and my mum. My dad's always been a real workaholic, and I do work a lot, but I've also learned now that actually, you know what, the business isn't going to fall apart just because I'm not on 24/7. And if I start to feel tired or start to feel a bit like ropey, then I'm like, right, actually I'm getting on the sofa, you know, and I'll sit on the sofa and watch some TV and chill out, and I'll go to bed early and, you know, what have you. So, you know, I've learned to sort of look after myself a bit better.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we've jumped around 2015. We've covered the area where you went to sue a well-known brand for ripping off your product. Where if we were filling in the gaps between 2017 up to 2019, where was the business going there? It turned into a 7-figure business, didn't it? Because you said 400, then 600,000.
Well, it skyrocketed. Woo! You know, I went from a 6-figure seller to a 7-figure seller. Aren't I amazing? Well, it did go to 7 figures, yes. And don't get me wrong, it was amazing. But it's not the be all and end all. And like I say, also, I mean, funnily enough, a lot of people talk about 7 figures or even 6 figures as if it's the be all and end all.
It's not. I know so many 7-figure sellers that are underwater, toxic debt underwater, because they pay 7 figures. So it can happen. It's a shame, but that's something that can happen. So at the end of the day, it's down to how much profit you make, which is key.
Correct.
But anyway, so you grew at 7 figures.
Vanity and profit is sanity, is what I always say. Yeah. And frankly, the other thing is the bigger your business gets, the more you actually end up having to do. So, for example, you know, if I wanted to make Snooshade a £10 million business, I probably could, but then I'd have to take on teams of people. I'd have to do this and that, and the other. And you know what? I actually don't want that. That is not my why. So my why for running my business is I work from home. I get to go out and meet people normally when we're not in lockdown, you know, and network, and I get to travel and make new contacts and make new friends, and, you know, just generally help other people, etc., which I really enjoy doing. And I get to see, I've barely missed, I mean, I've missed a couple of things in Holly's school schedule because I've happened to be on a plane or something, but that's it. As a general rule, I've always been there to take her to school, picking her up. You know, now we're in lockdown. You know, I see her every day. I mean, I see her every day anyway. You know, for me, you know, I didn't want to have a nanny if I had a child. And so, you know, for me, Holly is my main why. And what Snooshade allows me to do now is it allows me to pay all the bills very comfortably, and I'm very happy. As I said, I'm not interested in fast cars. I don't give a fuck about private Learjets. Can go screw themselves. I don't need a Ferrari, thanks. My dad had one. They're very unreliable, and an Aston Martin Lagonda, right? And, you know, they're really, and Rolls Royces and all the rest of it. And you know what? It doesn't bring you a moment of real, genuine happiness unless that's your particular bag. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. And I wear this top, I think it's about 8 years old, from Marks and Spencer's. And, you know, I'm not into designer clothes. I do like shopping. I have probably kept the UK economy going in lockdown, buying lots of things for my garden and things like that, you know, but actually it's all about what's your why, and then, you know, and then work out whether money is that why. Now, if the money is your why, then obviously you need to be doing 7 figures with a very healthy profit margin, right? Yeah. But if it's not money, then what is it? Is it spending time with your family? Is it going traveling? Is it this, that, and the other? And then work backwards. How much do you actually need? You know, I mean, one of the things the business has done over the last couple of years for me is it's allowed me to put some money into a pension, which I'd never done in my life before. And that sounds really boring, but actually, you know, if I don't have a pension, I'm 48, and in say 20 years time when I retire, if I don't have anything in a pension, then I'm going to be a bit screwed. So actually the business is helping me plan for my future. And so,
would you look at an exit? There's a lot of exits going on. Not so much. It's slowed down a bit now, but there is a lot of potential exits in the space.
It's a bit of a trend for everyone exiting.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, what you want to do, great. I don't see me exiting. I don't see because actually the other thing is also is if you have genuinely got a brand, there is a value in a long-standing brand. I don't see myself as an Amazon business. Amazon is a sales channel. That's all it is. I mean, it's a very good sales channel. Don't get me wrong. But it's a sales channel. My brand is something that exists outside of Amazon. And, you know, and so therefore, and it existed before I was on Amazon. And if Amazon goes down, it will exist after Amazon, you know. And so that's the difference, I think. And so, you know, for me, I actually see myself, I could easily do another, I've done 10 years so far, and I could easily do another 10 years of Snooshade carrying on. And actually one of the things that growing my revenue has done is it's allowed me to outsource more things of the business so that I don't have to think about so I can actually have a bit more free time. And then that's enabled me to I've been doing like some workshops and things like that on helping other people do what I've done on Amazon, you know, and that's the stuff that I enjoy as well. So, you know, actually what the money has done is the turnover has done is given me a bit more freedom.
Yeah, makes sense. How would you like to be remembered?
Hopefully as a great mum.
That was your in-depth.
Huh?
I said that was your in-depth. That's an incredible story. What advice would you like to give to female entrepreneurs out there?
Sorry, so Holly was distracting me. I'm so sorry.
What advice would you like to give to female entrepreneurs out there?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily just to female entrepreneurs, if I'm honest. I think it's any entrepreneur, but I think it's just, you know, keep going. Make sure your business is actually viable financially. You know, don't keep trying to chug away at something that isn't going to make you any money. There's no point, whether you're male, female, Sam Smith, they, or whatever you might be. You know, I think at the end of the day, you know, make sure that you're running a profitable business. And if you run run it and try and enjoy it if you can, because I think, you know, life's short. And, you know, I know a lot of people start Amazon businesses. It's all about the money. But I always say to people, if you're going to start a business, please do something at least that you have a passion for. Because, you know, when you do have the late nights, early mornings, you feel exhausted and all the rest of it, you've got to feel like you're doing it for a good cause, you know?
Yeah, no, exactly. Some comments here. Matt Parker says, hey, Danny. Hi, Cara. I've seen you before on previous casts and your honesty is fantastic and refreshing. Keep smashing it, Cara. Tiff says, love this, Cara. I'm not going to say that word. Reminds me of myself and encourages me to keep going. Katharina says, thank you, Cara. You're grounded and such a wonderful at normalizing mental health, which is almost a taboo in entrepreneurial world. Congrats on your strength and resilience. Tiffany says, thank you, Danny and Cara. Cara, what's the best way people can reach you if they want to have a chat, have an natter? Tea with Cara, coffee with Cara, was it?
I've had to stop doing it because I've been so bloody busy. I haven't had a chance to do it, but I was doing my cuppa with Cara, like on my Facebook page. So I've got a Facebook page called Make It, Market It, Sell It. And then basically that's all about, in theory, it's supposed to be me helping people with product businesses, but I haven't actually done a lot with it recently because I've been too busy. Because obviously, as Danny has mentioned, I think briefly, you know, COVID hit my business really, really hard.
I didn't say it in words. I'm under GDPR. You said that, but yeah.
Well, I said it. So COVID has hit my business really hard. So I was like 80% down in the US. I think I'm up again at the moment at 66% down. And I was down more in the UK, and I'm now at about 50% at the moment. So, you know, this is what I mean as well about, you know, it's not all about the numbers, it's about the profit. So, you know, I was running a 7-figure business last year. I'm running a 6-figure business this year. But actually, the profit numbers are not that bad. I mean, I may not make much of a profit this year because obviously I was gearing up to buy all the product to do another year like I did last year. And in fact, I was 100% up year on year in January, February, March. So that was amazing. Yeah, so, you know, it has been a bit of a struggle, but, you know, you just got to keep strong, keep focused, and, you know, keep on doing it.
Yeah, I think when we look in a dictionary, look up resilience, there's a picture of you in there. Right. Okay, let's go. What's it going to say? There's a term that I always use and I always say to people is that setbacks make way for comebacks, and you've had a dozen or so, and you keep going. So. Exactly. Right. Tomorrow, guys, 4 p.m. BST, I'll be back here with Cara, Liran, and Sharon Evan will be doing Mindset Sunday, life stroke balance. So hope you enjoyed the show today. Stay home, stay safe. Lots of love. I'll see you again tomorrow. Take care.